In 2022, the federal government handed out $111 billion for college and set zero limits on what schools could charge. To understand why tuition climbed the way it did, you need to understand the mechanism. Federal financial aid is a subsidy, money the government provides so students can afford a price they otherwise couldn't pay. There are two prices in higher education. Published tuition is the sticker price, the number on the brochure. Net cost is what a student actually pays after grants and aid come out. They're not the same number. At private, non-profit four-year institutions, average published tuition and fees rose from $34,760 in 2006 to $45,310 in 2020. The increase in tuition from 2006-07 to 2019-20 was a 312.4% increase above whatever inflation was doing over the same period. Here's the first counterintuitive finding. For in-state students at public four-year institutions, the inflation-adjusted net cost of attendance for 2006-07 was essentially flat compared to the prior period, up just 1.5%. The sticker price rose. The actual bill barely moved. So, if students at public universities aren't paying much more in real terms, why does the headline number keep climbing? The answer requires following a specific incentive, one quietly built into the aid system itself. In 2017, economists Luca, Nadald, and Shen at the New York Federal Reserve published a study examining what happens to tuition when federal aid increases. Their finding was precise and more than a little uncomfortable for policymakers on both sides of the aisle. For every dollar increase in subsidized federal loan availability, institutions raised tuition by roughly 65 cents. The aid didn't reduce the cost of college, it expanded the ceiling of what colleges could plausibly charge. This is called a demand-side subsidy. When the government guarantees buyers can access more credit, sellers, in this case colleges, discover they can raise prices without losing customers. The subsidy becomes a price floor in reverse. Federal financial aid programs set no limits on what institutions can charge. The money flows in. The price is entirely up to the school. That's not an oversight buried in bureaucratic fine print. It's how the underlying statute was deliberately written and how it stayed for decades. But here's where the audit gets more interesting. If tuition revenue is climbing, someone inside the institution is spending it. The question is, who and on what? The answer isn't what most people assume. According to a 2010 Goldwater Institute report by researcher Jay Green, between 1975 and 2008, full-time faculty at American universities grew by about 15%. Administrators grew by 221% over the same period. The institution wasn't primarily investing in instruction. Here's a misconception worth correcting directly. Despite rising tuition, no one is getting rich off universities. At least, not the way the phrase implies. Most nonprofit colleges run thin operating margins and carry significant debt loads. Nonprofit colleges use tuition setting as a strategic instrument. The published price isn't the real price. It's a starting point for negotiation. Schools use aid packages to attract the student mix they want, while staying financially solvent. Average net tuition and fees have actually decreased across higher education sectors over the last decade. The sticker price climbs, the average amount collected per student trends down. The gap between those two numbers is the discount rate. Which raises a sharper question. If almost nobody pays the sticker price, why does it matter at all? It matters because the students who do pay full price are disproportionately middle-income families. Too wealthy for aid, not wealthy enough to absorb the bill. Rising tuition is also driven by competition. Schools compete on amenities, rankings, and perceived prestige. A higher sticker price signals quality, whether or not the underlying education has changed. Price becomes marketing. When parents and students expect resort-style dormitories, climbing walls, and branded dining halls, institutions build them. Those buildings are financed with debt, and that debt is serviced with tuition revenue. The expectations aren't free. And here the loop tightens. Higher amenity costs require higher tuition. Higher tuition requires more federal aid to stay accessible. More federal aid expands the price ceiling again. The mechanism Luca, Noddald, and Shen identified doesn't stop at the first turn. Return to that $111 billion figure from 2022. That money arrived with requirements about enrollment, accreditation, and paperwork, but no requirement that the programs it funded produce measurable outcomes for the students borrowing to pay for them. Here's a question the data surfaces but rarely gets asked. What would happen if federal aid came with a price condition attached? Voters from both parties already support exactly that, a cap on tuition as a condition for receiving federal money. The policy has public support. It doesn't have institutional support. Universities are significant lobbying actors, and the current arrangement, unlimited pricing, guaranteed federal credit, is, from an institutional standpoint, a perfectly reasonable system to preserve. Follow the incentives. Institutions benefit from high sticker prices and guaranteed credit. Lenders benefit from high loan volumes. The federal government benefits from the political optics of expanding access. The student is the last variable in the equation. A first-generation student filling out a FAFSA in 2024 is participating in a system designed in the 1960s, expanded repeatedly without structural reform, and now distributing over $100 billion annually through a mechanism that technically rewards higher prices. This pattern isn't unique to higher education. Any market where a third-party payer subsidizes demand without constraining supply prices tends toward escalation. The same structural logic operates in healthcare, where third-party insurance coverage similarly decouples price from the point of purchase. The sticker price is a fiction, but a fiction with real consequences. Economists Caroline Hawksby and Christopher Avery documented in 2013 that high-achieving low-income students systematically underapply to selective colleges, often because the published price stops them before they ever calculate what aid they'd actually receive. The College Board's annual Trends in College Pricing report confirms the pattern holds broadly. High sticker prices consistently deter low-income students from applying, even when they'd qualify for aid that makes the net cost genuinely affordable. The number on the brochure shapes behavior before aid is ever calculated. No individual institution has an incentive to lower its published price unilaterally. A lower sticker price signals lower prestige in a ranking system that treats price as a quality proxy. The collective action problem is designed to prevent voluntary reform. For a family navigating this system right now, the practical implication is straightforward. The sticker price is a negotiating position, not a final offer. Net cost, the inflation-adjusted number after all aid, is the only figure worth comparing across institutions. Structural reform would require attaching outcome conditions to federal aid, something voters support but institutions resist. It would mean treating the $111 billion as a policy instrument rather than an entitlement. That's a different kind of federal program than the one currently running. In 2015, Sewanee, the University of the South's published tuition was $36,682. Applications rose, enrollment stabilized. The prestige penalty that game theory predicts didn't materialize. It was a controlled experiment the rest of higher education largely chose to ignore. Here's what you can do with this. If you're choosing a college, compare net costs, not sticker prices. If you're a voter, the bipartisan polling from Scene 21 means tuition caps tied to federal aid already have the public support to become policy. The mechanism that built this problem is well understood. The question is whether enough people decide to use that understanding. This audit is complete. The findings, as always, may be ignored.